Every morning, I make coffee at exactly 6:40 a.m. Not 6:30, not 7 o'clock, 6:40. Old habits don't just die. They settle into your bones like arthritis. You stop questioning them the same way you stop questioning the ache in your knees when it rains. The kettle I use is older than my daughter's marriage. Stainless steel, slightly dented on one side where Margaret dropped it back in 2009. I never fixed a dent. It felt inappropriate. Some things should stay exactly as they were when the person you loved last touched them. The kitchen is quiet at that hour. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock. 6:41, 6:42. I pour the water slowly over the grounds. Black coffee. No sugar. No milk. Margaret used to say I drank it, like a man who expected disappointment. She wasn't wrong. I carry the mug to the small table by the window, the one facing the backyard. The oak tree is still there, though it's leaning now just slightly like me. The fence needs repainting. The neighbor's dog still barks at nothing. Routine. Predictable. Manageable. That's how I like things, which is why I noticed it immediately. March 3rd, 2025, 8:12 a.m. I was reviewing my bank statement, something I've done every Tuesday for the past 23 years. Ever since I caught an insurance company overcharging me $47.32 in 2002. Not a large sum, but it taught me a simple lesson. Money disappears quietly if you don't watch it. The line item didn't look like much. Apple services, $14.99. I frowned. I don't own an Apple device. Never have. I use a Dell laptop from 2016 and a flip phone I bought at Walmart for $39. Works perfectly fine. Makes calls. Receives calls. That's all a phone needs to do. I circled the charge with a pen. Mistakes happen, I told myself. Banks reverse these things all the time. Still, I wrote it down in my notebook. Yes, I keep a notebook. Brown leather cover. Columns drawn by hand. Date, description, amount. It's not paranoia. It's discipline. There's a difference, though people like my daughter tend to confuse the two. March 5th, another charge. Amazon Marketplace. $62.40. Now that one bothered me. I do use Amazon occasionally. Replacement filters for the vacuum. Batteries. Once, a set of screwdrivers I didn't really need, but liked the look of. But I hadn't ordered anything that week. I checked my email. No receipt. Checked again. Nothing. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking under my weight, and took a slow sip of coffee. It had gone slightly bitter. Or maybe that was just my mood adjusting to reality. 2 charges. Small ones. Together, less than $80. Not worth making a fuss over. And yet, I turned the page of the statement. March 9th, Southwest Airlines, $312.78. That one sat there like a stain you can't scrub out. I don't fly. Haven't since 2018, when Margaret and I visited Denver, see your sister. She spent most of that trip complaining about the altitude and the hotel pillows. Too soft, she said. No structure. She liked things with structure. So did I. And there was nothing structured about this. I checked the date again. March 9th, Sunday. At that exact time, I had been home. I remember because I was fixing a toaster. The left side stopped heating properly, and I spent 40 minutes taking it apart, cleaning the contacts. I remember thinking, things should last longer than this. Turns out, the same applies to trust. I didn't panic. That's not my way. Instead, I did what I've always done when something doesn't make sense. I gathered data. I pulled the previous month's statement. February. At first glance, everything looked normal. Utilities, groceries, insurance. My pension comes in on the first, $3, $8.70. Predictable. Clean. But then I slowed down, line by line, and there it was again. Uber trip, $48.20. Target, $129.77. Ticketmaster, $226.50. I don't use Uber. I drive a 2008 Toyota Camry with 112,000 miles on it. Runs fine. I haven't been inside a Target in years. And the last concert I attended was in 1995. Billy Joel. Margaret insisted. I fell asleep halfway through. I felt something shift inside me then. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Recognition. You don't spend 40 years working as an accountant without developing a certain instinct. Numbers talk. Patterns form. And when something is wrong, it doesn't whisper. It repeats itself until you're forced to listen. I went further back. January. That's when the numbers stopped being small. Delta Airlines, $1,142. Airbnb, $2,980. Best Buy, $3,406.88. I sat very still. The clock ticked. 6:58 a.m. My coffee had gone completely cold now, but I didn't notice. I was adding. January, February, March. By the time I reached the bottom of the third page, I had written one number in my notebook, $18,732.54. I stared at it. Then I turned to December. That's when my hand tightened around the pen, because December alone was over $22,000. Trips, electronics, jewelry. I recognized the retailer name, Tiffany & Company. I'd bought Margaret a bracelet there once, back in 2010. Cost me $1,200 and a week of hesitation. This charge was for $4,870. I let out a slow breath. Still not anger. Not yet. Just clarity. There was only one person who could do this. One person with access. One person I had trusted enough to add to my account, just in case. My daughter, Emily. I remember the day I gave her access. It was April 14th, 2021. I even wrote it down. Of course I did. We were sitting in this very kitchen. You never know, Dad, she said, stirring her tea but not drinking it. What if something happens? I should be able to help. Help. That's the word she used. I looked at the numbers again. December, January, February, March. I didn't need to finish April to know where this was going, but I did anyway, because I believe in complete information. By 7:22 a.m., I had the final total written in my notebook. I underlined it once, then twice. $74,986.13. $75,000. Gone. Not stolen loudly. Not taken in one dramatic sweep. No, taken away termites eat a house. Quietly, steadily. Until one day the structure gives way and you realize you've been living inside something hollow. I closed the notebook, stood up slowly, walked to the sink and poured the cold coffee down the drain. Then I reached for my phone. And for a moment, just a moment, I allowed myself to wonder something simple, almost naive. Did she really think I wouldn't notice? If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. I didn't call her right away. That's the difference between a young man and an old one. A young man reacts. An old man verifies. At 7:30 a.m., I sat back down at the table, opened the notebook again, and drew a second column. Dates on the left, transactions on the right, clean lines. No, just facts. December 18th, Tiffany & Company, $4,870. December 22nd, American Airlines, $1,264.55. December 23rd, Marriott Hotels, $2,110.40. I pause there. Christmas. I remember that week clearly. I had spent alone, not dramatically alone, just the quiet, predictable kind. A small turkey breast from Kroger, instant mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce from a can that made that familiar suction sound when you open it. Emily had called on the 24th. Dad, we're keeping it small this year, she said. Just staying home. Home. Apparently, home. Included a hotel in Phoenix and a $4,800 bracelet. I wrote the next line. January 5th, Best Buy, $3,406.88. January 6th, Delta Airlines, $1,142. January 6th, Airbnb, $2,980. 3 transactions. Same week. That's not random. That's a trip. I leaned back again, rubbing the bridge of my nose. The house felt quieter than usual. Even the refrigerator seemed to hum more softly, like it didn't want to interrupt the math. By 8:10, I had 6 full pages. Every charge categorized. Travel, electronics, dining, retail, patterns. Not emergencies. Not just in case. Lifestyle. I stood up and walked to the living room. The carpet still has that faint indentation where Margaret's armchair used to be. I never replaced it. The room didn't need filling. It needed remembering. On the bookshelf, next to the photo albums, sat a small black folder. Bank Documents. I pulled it out, flipped through the tabs, and found what I was looking for. Authorized user form. April 14th, 2021. Emily's name in neat, printed letters. My signature beneath it. I read the fine print again, slowly. Authorized users may access funds, initiate transactions, and utilize account services without prior notification to the primary account holder. Without prior notification. There it was. Legal, clean, efficient, like a knife that doesn't make a mess. I closed the folder and returned to the kitchen. This time I didn't sit. I dialed her number standing up. It rang 3 times. Hi, Dad. Her voice was bright, too bright, like someone turning on a light in a room where they don't expect to be seen. Morning, Emily. You were up early, she said, laughing lightly. What is it, your famous 6 a.m. routine? 6:40, I corrected automatically. Right. Of course. A pause. Not long, but noticeable. I was reviewing my bank statements, I said. Silence. Not complete silence. There was movement on her end. Maybe a cabinet closing. Maybe footsteps. Okay, she said slowly. There are some transactions I don't recognize. Oh, a quick exhale. Like what? I glanced at the notebook. Let's start with something simple, I said. Apple services. $14.99. March 3rd. Oh, that, she said immediately. Too quickly. That's just a subscription. Probably nothing. I don't have subscriptions. Well, maybe it's, I don't know, something automatic? These things happen, Dad. These things repeat, I said calmly. Amazon, Uber, airlines. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear something in the background. Voices? A television? It didn't sound like she was alone. Emily, I said, keeping my tone even. Did you use my account for any purchases? She laughed. Actually laughed. Dad, come on. It's not like that. Not like that. I felt something tighten in my chest. Still not anger, but closer. What is it like? I asked. It's just family stuff, she said. Sometimes I put things on your card because it's easier. I always meant to tell you. You didn't. I was going to. When another silence and a slight edge in her voice. Why are you making this a big deal? I looked at the number again. $75,000. A big deal, I repeated. Yes, a big deal. It's just money, Dad. You're not exactly struggling. That one landed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just precisely. Like she'd aimed for it. I walked to the window. The oak tree swayed slightly in the morning wind. It's not about struggling, I said. It's about permission. Oh my God, she exhaled. You're being dramatic. Am I? Yes. I mean, you always said you wanted to help. That's what this is. Help, I said quietly, is usually requested. Well, I'm requesting it now, she snapped. There, happy. I closed my eyes for a moment. There it was. Not confusion. Not apology. Expectation. How much do you think you've used? I asked. I don't know, she said quickly. A few thousand? Maybe 10. 75,000, Emily. Silence. Complete this time. Even the background noise stopped, as if the room around her had frozen. That's not possible, she said finally. It is. No, you're exaggerating. I wrote down every transaction. Dates. Amounts. Vendors. You always do that, she muttered. Yes, I said. I do. Another pause. Then softer. Okay, maybe it's more than I thought. But, Dad, we needed it. We, of course. For what? I asked. For things, she said vaguely. Bills. Travel. The kids. There are no kids, Emily. She stopped. I let that sit. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need emphasis. It just needs space. It's not like I was stealing, she said finally. Her voice defensive again. I have access. You gave it to me. I gave you access, I said, not ownership. Well, what's the difference? She shot back. I looked down at my notebook, at the careful lines, the precise numbers. A lifetime of discipline reduced to a casual shrug. The difference, I said slowly, is about $75,000. She didn't answer. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. Look, I'm busy right now. Can we not do this over the phone? Of course she was busy. Trips to take. Things to buy. Yes, I said. Relief flickered in her voice. Good. We'll talk later, okay? No, I said calmly. We'll talk tonight. Dinner. Your place. A hesitation. Tonight. 7 p.m. Another pause. Fine. The line clicked dead. I stood there for a moment, phone still in my hand. Then I walked back to the table, opened the notebook, and under the total, $1.74, 986.13, I wrote one more line. 7 p.m., dinner. This time I felt it. Not anger. Not yet. But something had shifted. Structure, Margaret used to say, is what keeps things from collapsing. And for the first time I realized this wasn't about money. This was about what happens when structure disappears. I arrived at 6:52 p.m., 8 minutes early, not out of politeness, out of habit. Time, like money, is something I've never liked wasting. Emily lives in a townhouse development about 20 minutes from me. Gated, uniform hedges, identical mailboxes, the kind of place that looks orderly from the outside, even when what's inside is less so. I parked along the curb, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment. Her porch light was on, warm yellow, inviting. Appearances matter. Margaret used to polish the silverware before guests came over, even if no one would notice. It's not for them, she'd say. It's for me. I know it's right. I stepped out of the car. The air was cool. Early spring. Someone nearby was grilling charcoal, not gas. You could always tell by the smell. It lingered in the air, heavy and familiar. I rang the doorbell at exactly 6:59. Emily opened the door almost immediately. "Dad," she said, forcing a smile. "Emily?" She looked, well, that's the word people use when they don't want to say more. Her hair was done, nails polished, a soft sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Nothing about her suggested urgency, or struggle, or need. "Coming?" I stepped inside. The house smelled of something artificial, vanilla, maybe. A candle burning on the kitchen counter, the kind that tries to imitate warmth instead of creating it. "Mark's here too," she added. Of course he was. Mark appeared from a living room, holding a glass of something amber. Whiskey, judging by the color. Expensive, judging by the way he held it, like it was part of his personality. "Hey, sir," he said casually. "Good to see you." "Sir, not Dad." "Never Dad." "Mark," I nodded. We shook hands. His grip was firm, confident, the kind of confidence that usually comes from spending other people's money. "Can I get you something?" Emily asked. "Wine? Water?" "Water is fine." She turned quickly toward the kitchen, grateful for the movement. I watched her pour from a glass pitcher into a tall, spotless glass. Everything in this house was spotless. New countertops, stainless steel appliances, a refrigerator that probably cost more than my first car. I took the glass when she handed it to me. "Thank you." We sat at the dining table. For chairs, only 3 occupied. For a moment no one spoke. Then Mark cleared his throat. "So," he said, leaning back slightly, "Emily said you had some questions about finances." "Questions. That's one way to put it." "I do," I said. Emily avoided my eyes, adjusting her napkin even though there was no food yet. "Dad, before we get into this," she said, "I just want to say, you're blowing this out of proportion." I took a slow sip of water, set the glass down carefully. "Am I?" "Yes," she said more firmly now. "It's not like we were hiding anything." I looked at her. "You didn't tell me." "That's not the same as hiding." Mark nodded beside her. "Exactly. It's just timing. Things got busy. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the folded pages. Printed bank statements. I placed them on the table, neatly aligned. "I find that when things are unclear," I said, "paper helps." Emily's eyes flicked to the pages, then away. Mark leaned forward, scanning the top sheet. "Yeah, okay," he said after a moment. "That's a lot of numbers." "They add up," I replied. He gave a small, humorless chuckle. "Numbers usually do." I slid the top page toward them. "December," I said. "Let's start there." Emily sighed. "Dad, do we really have to go line by line?" "Yes." A short word, but it settled the room. She crossed her arms. "Fine." I pointed. "Tiffany and Company, $4,870. "That was a gift," she said quickly. "For whom?" She hesitated. "For me," Mark said smoothly. "Anniversary." I looked at him. "And you thought it appropriate to use my account?" He shrugged. "We thought it was fine. Family supports each other." I nodded slowly. "Next," I said. "Airbnb $2,980.Phoenix." "That was Christmas," Emily said. "We needed a break." "A break," I repeated. "From what?" Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand how stressful things are for us." "No," I said. "I don't." Because I was too busy working 40 years to avoid stress by planning ahead. But I didn't say that. Not yet. I moved my finger down the page. Best Buy, $3,406. Home office, Mark said. I work from home sometimes, with equipment I paid for. It's an investment, he said, in our future. I leaned back slightly. Our future. Emily finally looked at me. Yes, she said. Our future. We're building something. Dad, you always told me to think long-term. I did, I agreed. I did not tell you to fund it with my retirement. Her expression hardened. You have plenty. There it was again. Not a question. A statement. A justification. I felt something shift then. Not explode. Settle. Like a decision finally finding its place. How much do you think is plenty, Emily? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know. Enough. Enough for what? For this, she said, gesturing around the room. For helping your family. I looked around. The polished surfaces. The expensive fixtures. The curated comfort. Then I looked back at her. This, I said quietly, is not help. Mark exhaled sharply. Okay, let's not get dramatic. I turned to him. $75,000, I said, is not drama. It's a number. It's not like we can't pay it back, he said quickly. When? Another pause. We'll figure it out. Of course they would. Eventually. Maybe. When convenient. I nodded. I see. Emily leaned forward now, her voice softer. Dad, why are you acting like this? We're your family. I held her gaze. Yes, I said. And family share. No, I said calmly. Families ask. The silence that followed was different this time. Heavier. Final. Mark shifted in his chair. Emily looked down at her hands. And for the first time that evening, neither of them had an answer. I reached for my glass, took a slow sip, then set it down, carefully, because some conversations, like some structures, only collapse once, and I had no intention of rebuilding this one the same way twice. I didn't stay for dessert. There wasn't any, of course. That would have required preparation, effort, consideration. Instead, there was silence, the kind that lingers after something has been said that cannot be unsaid. Emily walked me to the door. Dad, she said, her voice softer now, almost rehearsed. You're overthinking this. I put on my coat slowly. The same gray coat I've worn for the past 6 winters. The lining is worn at the cuffs. Margaret used to say I should replace it. I'm thinking exactly as much as is required, I replied. She sighed. You're acting like we betrayed you. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said very calmly, You did. Her face tightened, but she didn't argue. That was new. Behind her, Mark remained at the table, scrolling through his phone, detached, unbothered, as if $75,000 was a rounding error. Call me tomorrow, Emily said quickly. We'll figure something out. Figure something out. Yes, I said. We will. I stepped outside. The night air felt colder than it had an hour before. Or maybe that was just me noticing it more. I got into my car, closed the door, and sat there without starting the engine. For a while, I just looked at the dashboard clock. 7:48 p.m. 56 minutes. That's how long it took for $75,000 to become something else entirely. Not money, not numbers, a decision. The next morning, I woke up at 6:40 a.m. Of course I did. Routine doesn't disappear just because something breaks. Coffee, black, bitter, notebook, open. But this time, I didn't review past transactions. I made a list. Short, precise. Bank lawyer documentation. I underlined the last word twice. By 8:15, I was at the bank. Same branch I've used for 15 years. Same carpet. Same faint smell of printer toner and polished wood. The young woman at the front desk smiled. Good morning, Mr. Harris. How can we help you today? Her name tag read Lena. Mid-20s. Efficient smile. I need to speak with a manager, I said. Her smile flickered just slightly. Of course. Is everything all right? No, I said. It isn't. That was enough. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a glass office with a man named Richard Coleman. Late 40s. Clean suit. Careful eyes. What seems to be the issue, Mr. Harris? He asked, folding his hands on the desk. I placed the statements in front of him. All of it, I said. He began to read. Slowly at first, then faster. His expression didn't change much, but I spent a lifetime reading subtle shifts. The tightening of the jaw, the slight narrowing of the eyes. Recognition. This is significant, he said finally. Yes. And these transactions were not authorized. They were not permitted, I corrected. He nodded. There is a difference, he said. Yes, I replied. There is. He leaned back slightly. I see here that your daughter is listed as an authorized user. She is. And she had full access to the account. Yes. He exhaled slowly. That complicates things. Of course it did. Nothing is ever simple when trust is involved. I'm not here for simple, I said. I'm here for accurate. He gave a small nod. What would you like to do? That's the question people always ask when they think you might hesitate. I didn't. I want her access revoked. Immediately. That can be done today. I also want a full transaction history certified. Of course. And I want to file a formal dispute. He paused. With the bank. And with whoever needs to see it? I said. Another pause. Longer this time. You understand, he said carefully, that pursuing this formally could have legal implications for your daughter. I looked at him. Yes, I said. I do. He held my gaze for a moment, as if waiting for something. Doubt, hesitation, regret. He found none. All right, he said quietly. Paperwork began. Forms, signatures, copies, structure. It felt familiar, comforting even. By 10:30, it was done. Access revoked. New account protections in place. Documentation requested. As I stood to leave, Richard spoke again. Mr. Harris, he said, if I may, these situations can be emotionally difficult. I paused at the door. They are only difficult, I said, when you pretend they're something else. He didn't respond. There was nothing to say. At 12:05 p.m., I made the second call. Law offices of Bennett and Clark. A voice answered. I'd like to schedule a consultation, I said. Regarding financial misconduct, I replied. Family related. A brief silence. Of course, sir. We have an opening tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. I'll take it. That evening, the house felt different. Not emptier. Clearer. I sat at the table with my notebook. The number was still there. $74,986.13. But now beneath it I added something new. Recovered. Pending. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and for the first time in a long while, I slept without waking up in the middle of the night. Because uncertainty keeps you awake. But decisions let you rest. And mine had already been made. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and restraint. That's the only way I can describe it. Dark shelves lined with thick books no one reads anymore. A polished desk. 2 chairs placed at a careful angle. Not confrontational, not friendly. Neutral territory. Margaret would have approved. Mr. Harris, Daniel Bennett said, extending his hand. I've reviewed the preliminary notes you provided. His grip was measured, not weak, not aggressive, professional. I sat down. On his desk lay a folder. My folder. $75,000. Reduced to paper and ink. Walk me through it, he said. So I did. Dates. Transactions. Conversations. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't embellish. Didn't need to. Facts, when properly arranged, carry their own weight. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making a note with a fountain pen. Real ink, not a cheap ballpoint. A man who understood permanence. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. You've done something most people don't, he said. What's that? You documented everything before reacting. I nodded. Reaction is expensive, I said. Documentation is not. A faint smile. Yes, he said. That's accurate. He opened the folder, flipping to the bank statements. Legally, he began. This sits in a gray area. I assumed as much. Your daughter had authorized access. That weakens a direct claim of fraud. But, I prompted. He looked up. But, he said, authorization is not unlimited consent, especially at this scale. I didn't move. $75,000 over multiple months, he continued. Luxury expenses. No documentation of repayment agreements. No written consent. He tapped the paper lightly. This can be argued as financial exploitation. The word settled into the room. Exploitation. Not borrowing. Not misunderstanding. Something colder. More accurate. What are my options? I asked. He closed the folder. We could start with a formal demand letter, he said. Immediate repayment, full accounting, revocation acknowledgement. And if they refuse? His expression didn't change. Then we escalate. How far? As far as you're willing to go. There it was again. That question, not legal, personal. I thought of Emily at 7 years old, sitting at this very table. Well, not this table, but mine, counting coins into little stacks. Quarters go here, Dad? Yes, I told her. And you keep track of what you take. She had nodded seriously. She understood then. So what changed? I looked back at Daniel. Prepare the letter, I said. It was sent at 2:40 p.m. Email, certified mail, clean, documented. No, just numbers, dates, expectations. $74,986.13. Due within 14 days. At 3:12 p.m. my phone rang. Emily. I let it ring twice. 3 times. Then I answered. Hello. What is this? She snapped immediately. No greeting. No hesitation. Good afternoon, Emily. Don't do that, she said sharply. Don't act like this is normal. This is normal, I said. This is what happens when records are reviewed. Records, she scoffed. You sent a legal letter. To your own daughter. Yes. A pause. Short. Sharp. You're unbelievable, she said. No, I replied. I'm consistent. I could hear movement on her end. Faster now. Agitated. Mark's voice in the background, muffled, but present. What does it say? He asked. She's bluffing, Emily whispered, not quite covering the phone. I didn't correct her. Not yet. $75,000? She continued, louder now. Are you serious? I am. That's not even accurate. It is. You're counting everything like it's some kind of crime. It is a record. It's family, she snapped. There it was again. That word, used like a shield. I let a second pass before answering. Family, I said slowly, does not remove responsibility. You're trying to scare us, she said. This won't hold up. Perhaps, I said. That's what courts are for. Silence. Real silence this time. Then, you wouldn't, she said. Not angry. Not defensive. Uncertain. I looked at the notebook on the table. At the number. At the line beneath it. Recovered. Pending. I already did, I said. Her breath caught. Behind her, I heard Mark again, closer now. Give me the phone, he said. A rustle. Then his voice. Mr. Harris, he began, controlled but tight. I think I got off on the wrong foot here. No, I said. We started exactly where we needed to. This is unnecessary, he continued. We can handle this privately. We had that opportunity, I said. You're escalating things that don't need escalation. $75,000, I repeated, is escalation. A pause. Then his tone shifted. Less smooth. More direct. You're going to regret this, he said. There it was. Not apology. Not explanation. Threat. I felt it then. Finally. Not explosive. Not loud. But clear. Anger. Cold. Focused. Precise. No, I said quietly. I won't. You're destroying your relationship with your daughter over money. I looked out the window. The oak tree stood still in the afternoon light. No, I said. That was already done. I'm just documenting it. He didn't respond immediately. When he did, the confidence was thinner. We need time, he said. You have 14 days. That's not enough. It is. Another pause. Then more quietly. What if we can't pay it all at once? A reasonable question. Finally, you should have considered that, I said, before spending it. Silence. Then the line went dead. At 5:06 p.m., I received an email. Subject, we need to talk. No greeting. No apology. Just urgency. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I went to the kitchen. Put the kettle on. 6:40 would come again tomorrow. Routine matters. Structure matters. Because, without it, people start believing that access means ownership. That silence means permission. That family means immunity. I poured the water over the coffee grounds. Watched it settle. Then, finally, I returned to the table. Opened the email. And for the first time since this began, I saw something new. Not confidence. Not entitlement. Fear. And it was appropriate. The email was short. That surprised me. For people who spend money so easily, words usually come just as freely. Excuses, explanations, emotional padding. Not this time. We need to talk. In person. Tonight, if possible. Emily? No, Dad. No softness. Just urgency. I checked the time. 5:12 p.m. I let it sit for exactly 12 minutes before replying. Tomorrow, 10:00 a.m. My house. Structure. Even now, especially now, they arrived at 9:47 a.m. Early. That was new. I watched from the kitchen window as Mark parked the car, something German, recent, expensive. The kind of car you don't buy when you're careful with money. Emily stepped out first. No makeup this time. Hair pulled back. Sunglasses too large for her face, like she was trying to hide inside them. Mark followed, slower, less confident than before. His shoulders slightly tighter. His movements more deliberate. Fear changed his posture. I opened the door before they rang. Good morning, I said. Dad, Emily started. Coming? They stepped inside. For a moment, they both paused. I've noticed that before. People always pause in this house. Not because it's impressive, it isn't, but because it's honest. Nothing here pretends to be more than it is. We sat at the kitchen table. Same chairs, same place where 5 years ago, I signed the authorization form that made all of this possible. I placed the notebook in front of me. Closed. Deliberate. Emily looked at it, then at me. We read the letter, she said. I assumed you had. Her hands were clasped tightly together. We can't pay that, she said. We don't want to. That's unfair. Can't. Progress. You should have considered that, I replied, before spending it. Mark shifted beside her. We're not saying we won't pay, he said carefully. We're saying we need terms. Terms. Now it was a negotiation. I nodded once. Go on. Emily exhaled. We can do monthly payments, she said. $5,000 a month. I did the math immediately. 15 months. No interest. No acknowledgement of what it cost me, not just financially, but structurally. No, I said. Her head snapped up. No. That's reasonable, she insisted. That's a lot of money every month. It is, I agreed. You seem comfortable spending more than that in a week. Her face flushed. That's different. Yes, I said. It is. Silence. Mark leaned forward slightly. What do you want, he asked. A simple question. Finally, I opened the notebook, turned it toward them. The number sat there. $74,986.13. Beneath it, one more line, added this morning. Administrative costs. $3,500. Emily frowned. What is that? Time, I said. Legal consultation. Documentation. That's not fair, she snapped. Neither's this, I replied, tapping the total. Another silence. Heavier now. I folded my hands. Here are the terms, I said. Their attention sharpened. Full acknowledgement in writing that the funds were used without explicit permission. Emily's jaw tightened. That sounds like. It sounds accurate, I said. She looked away. Second, I continued. A repayment plan of 12 months. $6,500 per month. Mark let out a low whistle. That's deep. So was your spending. He didn't argue. Third, I said, you will have no financial access to any of my accounts. Ever again. Emily flinched slightly. That one landed deeper than the others. And finally, I said, if any payment is missed, the matter proceeds formally, without further discussion. Silence. Long. Uncomfortable. Necessary. Emily's eyes moved between the notebook and the table, as if the answer might be written somewhere she hadn't checked yet. This is extreme, she said quietly. No, I replied. This is measured. Mark leaned back, exhaling slowly. If we agree, he said, this goes away? I looked at him. No, I said. He frowned. No. This, I said, gesturing lightly between us, does not go away. The legal matter might. The rest doesn't. Emily swallowed. Her voice, when it came, was smaller. You're really doing this? I held her gaze. Yes. Another pause. Then finally, okay, she said. One word. But it cost her something. I'll sign it, she added. Mark looked at her, surprised. We don't have a choice, she said quietly. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay. I closed the notebook. Good, I said. The papers were signed 2 days later. Clean. Official. Documented. The first payment arrived exactly on time. $6,500. I wrote it down. Of course I did. Weeks passed. Then months. Payments continued. On time. Every time. Structure had been restored. Not trust. That's a different system entirely. One evening I stood by the window with my coffee. 6:40 p.m. this time. The oak tree outside had started to bloom again. Small leaves. Fragile but persistent. Things grow back. Not the same. But enough. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily. Payment sent. Hope you're doing okay. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I placed the phone face down on the table. No reply. Not out of anger. Not anymore. Just balance. Because, in the end, that's what this was always about. Not punishment. Not revenge. Balance. I took a slow sip of coffee. Still bitter. Still right. And for the first time since I wrote that number down, it no longer felt like a loss. Just a correction. Finally made. Stories like this happen more often than we think. By the way, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state below. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel.